The story begins by showing the Mole Knight warriors led by Sikiguten, also known as the commander of the Komari troops, receiving news from another team about their early victory. The warriors were delighted to hear this news, so they held a party with roasted chicken and drank alcohol to celebrate that night. Upon hearing this, Kanti was very surprised and immediately reprimanded the warriors, reminding them not to be too happy yet and to remain vigilant because early victory was not everything. Afterwards, Kanti asked for Komari's opinion on his speech, where she agreed with him, stated that the warriors should not underestimate the enemy. Komari also added that with her leadership, she believed that the Mole Knight Kingdom would win and wanted high fighting spirit from her troops. After that, it was told how Komari initially became a Sikiguten. One bright morning, Komari was seen lazily lying in her soft bed because she was still unemployed member of a wealthy noble family. Komari also couldn't do many difficult things, so she chose to relax at home. As a failed vampire, Komari found it difficult to live outside full of challenges, so she relied on her prestigious family name. But as time went by, Komari felt bored and wanted to work. Shortly after, Vil, a high-ranking military official, appeared and woke up Komari. At that moment, she informed Komari that she didn't have time to relax anymore because the emperor was waiting for her. Although Komari still wanted to use the restroom, Vil prohibited her and pulled her hand to get ready. At that moment, Komari's father, who was a famous noble, appeared and stopped Vil. Her father then told Komari about her new job, where she was surprised to hear this news because she had never asked to become a Special Forces unit commander. Komari's father then explained that some time ago, she asked for a job. Therefore, her father spoke about this to the emperor, and the emperor gave permission the previous night when he came to perform a ritual with Komari. She was very surprised to hear her father's explanation, and she was asked to get ready to meet the emperor. When she arrived, Komari was warmly welcomed by the female emperor named Karen, who explained to her about the position she had to take. As the commander of the royal troops, Komari had to appear strong, even though in reality, she was very weak as she couldn't open the door by herself. Karen then emphasized that Komari had to appear strong and intimidating in front of the warriors, so Komari resigned herself to the emperor's orders. The next day, when she began her duties, Komari entered a room and was suddenly attacked. At that moment, she was very surprised and accidentally killed a rebel by holding his neck with the door. Komari then cried in Vil's arms because she felt guilty for her actions, while Vil was happy because she finally acted decisively. After that, Komari entered the hall to introduce herself to the warriors. Upon seeing her, everyone was very scared because she had defeated a warrior, and Komari said she could destroy everyone in seconds, which frightened the warriors. Komari then continued her introduction, aided by Vil, who added a cruel impression about her. Shortly after, Komari and her troops fought against the kingdom led by a large monkey. Komari then successfully led the troops well, and they won convincingly. After the victory, Komari gathered with the warriors and gave advice, emphasizing the importance of following her leadership. The warriors immediately shouted with enthusiasm, making Komari even more excited. Not long after, Komari was visited by the media from the news unit of the army, who wanted to interrogate her about her appointment as commander. At that moment, Komari only explained about herself and her greatness, but the news made was exaggerated and made it difficult for she. The next day, Komari woke up and immediately read the newspaper given by Vil. While reading, she was very surprised to see the exaggerated news about herself. However, Komari was even more surprised when Vil found her romance novel. At that moment, Komari promised to obey Vil as long as she didn't spread the word that Komari liked to read adult novels. Vil then happily hugged Komari and teased her, as she considered Komari very cute. The following day, Komari was seen still lazily lying on her soft bed, but she had to get up after Vil disturbed her. Vil then reminded Komari that she had to go meet with the criminal gang for a meeting. Komari was immediately surprised to hear this and quickly got ready to meet the warriors she led. A few moments later, the lieutenants named Melikansi then asked Komari to directly participate in the war, which surprised her. Vil then said that the meeting would continue with a session of giving rewards to her because she had led the troops very well and achieved success for the imperial forces. Melikansi then tried to entertain Komari by singing a song and invited her to duet. Hearing that, Komari sang along with Melikansi, and they seemed to be a perfect match for each other. After the meeting, Kanti and Inu were seen preparing to leave the gate. As they walked, Conti arrived and handed over old documents about the atrocities committed by Komari. At that moment, they gossiped about a dangerous incident a few years ago, where Komari had actually committed genocide, but Millicent was the one who accused. This story was unclear because the evidence was hidden to protect Komari's reputation. Meanwhile, Komari herself did not know that she had committed the crime. When Conti and Inu were getting ready to leave, they met Millicent, who greeted them and threatened to attack the emperor. At that moment, Millicent planned to do it later after she seek revenge against Komari. The two soldiers who were loyal to Komari immediately became angry and attacked Millicent. However, she was very strong. Even though she was attacked, Millicent continued to dodge at high speed as she had no intention of fighting. Finally, Millicent decided to leave because she didn't want to make a bigger mess. The next day, Komari was woken up by Vil after she was surprised to saw Vil wearing sexy clothes. At the time, Vil also managed to persuade Komari to go to work, including choosing her mount. Upon arriving at the mount selection location, Komari chose an animal without paying attention to its fierceness. During the test, Komari was shocked by the speed of her horse and terrified when the horse ran away with her. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Johann was seen grumbling in the garden about Komari's cruelty in once releasing his neck. When Komari appeared, she accidentally crushed Johann again with her horse. At that moment, her troops were shocked to see Komari's prowess in attacking with one strike. However, Johann rose and asked for a duel with Komari out of curiosity about her strength. Upon hearing this, Komari accepted the challenge and the fight began. Initially, Komari was relaxed, but as time went on, she became more and more powerful. Vil from the rooftop orchestrated the fight, secretly aiding her without being noticed by her opponents. Johann was then poisoned to quickly lose, making him surprised to see Komari so strong even though she didn't do much. However, Johann did not realize that the mastermind behind Komari was Vil. Finally, with the help of Vil's planned attack, Johann was overwhelmed and Komari declared victory, making all the warriors proud of their leader. After enjoying themselves, Komari and the others returned and rested. She then bathed in the sauna and was surprised when Vil interrupted her. At that moment, she thanked Vil for her help and enjoying her sauna. Sometime later, Komari and the others attended a victory celebration hosted by the emperor. At the same time, Lieutenant Johann was still alive and upset because of Komari's arrogance. While Johann was drinking, Millicent suddenly came over to him and offered cooperation after she managed to get inside Komari's victory celebration while wearing a mask. Shortly after, Millicent launched her action to annoy Komari because she had been her victim in the past. Komari was shocked when approached by Millicent, but did not recognize her identity because she was wearing a mask. When Millicent removed her mask, Komari was very surprised and traumatized to meet her again, while Millicent was happy to disturb Komari again. The scene then showing in the past, where Millicent was seen bullied the innocent Vil. She was angry with Vil and even beat her up, while the other friends enjoyed the situation. Eventually, Millicent tried to kill Vil, but Komari suddenly appeared and stopped her. At that moment, Millicent beat up Komari for interfering. Back in the present, it is revealed that Komari does not remember Vil due to being traumatized by Millicent's cruelty. At that moment, Millicent attacked Komari and caused a commotion at the party that injuring Komari's colleagues. Vil then tried to save Komari, but she was attacked by Millicent. During the commotion, the emperor suddenly arrived, which resulted in Millicent deciding to leave immediately. After that, Komari secluded herself, while Vil met with Conti, who wanted to take action against Millicent. Upon hearing this, Vil stopped Conti actions and gave food to Komari. At that moment, Komari was shocked when Vil told her that she had helped her before, because Komari had forgotten it. While Vil was telling the story, Millicent suddenly appeared and stabbed Vil, then took her away. At that moment, Komari was shocked and promised to save Vil. Sometime later, Millicent was seen held Vil hostage in front of Lieutenant Johann. At that moment, Johann tried to stop Millicent's crazy actions as she used a cursed weapon that cannot be healed, but instead he was attacked and seriously injured by Millicent. Shortly after, Komari appeared and stated that she would rescue Vil. Upon hearing this, Millicent immediately laughed at Komari's courage in coming to meet her. Millicent then tells her past to Komari. When her father ordered her to train to awaken special powers, because her family was a rival to Komari's family. At that time, Millicent was forced to train hard. even tortured by her teacher while using a cursed weapon that never healed her wounds. This resulted in Millicent hatred toward Komari's family because they had special powers that could heal others. The next day, Millicent met Vil, who possessed special powers. At that moment, Millicent wanted to suck Vil's blood to know her future, but she became angry when Vil called her weak. When Millicent tried to attack Vil, she was saved by Komari with her arrival. Back to the present, Millicent, who had deep hatred towards Komari, immediately attacked her. As Komari prepared to face Millicent, she moved Johan aside to prevent him from getting hurt. During the fight, Komari used various types of magic because she couldn't use touch magic. Initially, Komari struggled, but eventually managed to defeat Millicent. When Komari freed Vil, she was surprised when Millicent suddenly attacked her. Komari was shocked by the attack, and her special power awakened with her anger. Komari immediately attacked Millicent with the intention of killing her. This shocked the members of the troops, and they were in a state of protection. Komari then sent an attack that overwhelmed Millicent. Finally, Komari and her friends managed to capture Millicent, but Komari felt exhausted after the fight and rested at home. The following day, Komari woke up and met her father along with Vil. At that moment, Vil found out that Komari had extraordinary powers. However, her father hid that power from her so that Komari wouldn't remember it. Therefore, Vil was entrusted to continue to protect Komari. After that, Komari and Vil became close again, and she was very happy because Vil had recovered. The next day, Komari and Vil walked together, until Kanti arrived and starts chatting with Vil, making Komari increasingly bored with the behavior of his subordinates. At that moment, Kanti even gives a shirt with Komari's picture on it because she's very loved by his troops. It turns out, the shirt sells well and makes Komari famous, with many people becoming her fans. Suddenly, Komari is surprised by the arrival of a woman named Float. Although Float is popular, Komari doesn't know her, making her angry and furious because Komari seems to not appreciate her, especially because Komari is favored by the emperor. Shortly after, Vil praises Float's popularity and gives the Komari shirt as a gift. However, Float immediately throws away the shirt because she feels disgusted, then challenges Komari to demonstrate her strength in front of her. Feeling humiliated, Komari decided to accept the challenges to prove her military prowess. A short while later, Komari and Vil went to the emperor's room, where the emperor explained the death of one of the Sikiguten, who was then resurrected, and Komari's father also became a victim. It was then announced that everyone who died would be resurrected with power from the emperor. Sukuna was then introduced as Komari's partner, and they both decided to work together on the mission. Upon reaching the meeting location, Komari explained to her troops to capture the criminals who had caused the commotion. The soldiers became excited when they learned that the reward was a date with Komari, and quickly, they immediately set off on the mission. Not long after, Komari and the others were seen eating at a cafe and spending time together. Suddenly, Komari received bad news that her troops had been defeated. After that, Sukuna used her limited power to heal them, and Komari thanked her. At that moment, Float suddenly appeared and blamed Komari's troops for the chaos in the palace before finally leaving. Afterward, Komari and the others gathered to think of a way to complete the mission. However, Komari became frightened because Vil informed her that the Sikiguten were planning to attack her. Hearing this, Komari was very scared, but Vil and Sukuna promised to protect her. Next, the scene shifted to the meeting room between the emperor and the Sikiguten. At that time, Float gathered the Sikiguten to vote on Komari's fate. According to Float, Komari was a fraud because she did not look like a Sikiguten at all and had never shown her fighting abilities to everyone, making Float wonder how Komari could deceive everyone about her power. At that moment, Float showed Komari's school report card, which made Komari very surprised at how she could find her report card. Komari decided to remain silent and calm because she was afraid Float would reveal her secret. However, Emperor Karen stopped Float's actions and explained that she needed concrete evidence of Float's accusations. This made Float surprised because the Emperor was defending Komari. Karen then cornered Float, who always blamed Komari, even though she never acted recklessly in carrying out her duties as a Sikiguten, and Komari even managed to score high points for her battalion. Float couldn't argue against Karen's defense. At that moment, Komari immediately stepped forward and asked Karen to stop defending her. Komari then showed her prowess to Float by putting her foot on the table and acting arrogantly. She even asserted that she would prove her strength to Float, but not now. Rather, it would be represented by Vil. However, Vil refused, so Komari corrected her statement and arranged a fight schedule with Float at another time. Without further ado, Float announced the start of the voting. With 2 Shikiguten voting for Komari and 2 against her, Float was surprised to find that her ally chose not to vote and followed Jack's lead. However, it turned out that Jack was already unconscious due to poison from Vil. Everyone was shocked and suspicious of Komari, but they couldn't accuse her without evidence. After the meeting ended, everyone went back to their respective homes, with Komari and Vil feeling confused about the problems they faced. Nevertheless, Vil encouraged Komari to remain calm. Vil even asked about the novel she was writing, which made her realize something, and she immediately went to Sukuna's house to discuss the novel. When she arrived, Komari was soaking wet, so she borrowed clothes from Sukuna. There, Komari was surprised to see Sukuna's room filled with statues and collections about herself. After that, they started an important conversation where she invited Sukuna to form an alliance because neither of them had great power. Komari felt confident that if they joined forces, they would become stronger together. After that, Sukuna and Komari went to a park, where Sukuna told her about her family being held hostage by a terrorist group. She was forced to attack Komari under her superior's orders. Sukuna prepared to strangle Komari, but Vil suddenly appeared and invited Komari to go home because it was late. Meanwhile, Sukuna also returned and contacted her superior, who turned out to be a member of the same terrorist group as Millicent. Following orders, Sukuna met Millicent at the terrorist headquarters and was surprised by her presence. They began to chat. At that moment, Sukuna asked why Millicent was out of prison, and she explained that she was on a leave. Sukuna understood and stopped being suspicious of Millicent, then revealed her intention to leave the terrorist organization, which shocked Sukuna. After that, Millicent suggested Sukuna tell Komari about her problems, believing that Komari would help her. However, Sukuna refused because she did not want to burden Komari with the knowledge that Sukuna had been hiding her family's hostage situation by terrorists. Even though Komari knew about her problems, Sukuna did not want to involve her. But Millicent advised that Sukuna make a pact with Komari if she found herself cornered, so Komari could learn more about her. The next day, Sukuna and the others prepared for the battalion competition. At that time, Komari and the other Shikiguten were busy devising war strategies, as the winning battalion would receive a reward from the emperor. The Shikiguten then raced to win the competition. Meanwhile, Komari and Vil were planning strategies to avoid enemy attacks. Not long after, Jack's massed troops appeared and attacked Komari. Jack and his troops immediately launched an assault on Komari. Then, Vil and Komari chose to flee from the location, despite being continuously attacked. Meanwhile, Sukuna's team decided to attack Float. However, other Shikiguten attacked Komari and Vil because they were Float's main targets. On the other hand, the Emperor and Komari's father watched the battle through a magic orb. At that moment, the Emperor already knew that Komari's special power would awaken. Komari unleashed her power to explode the location. After seeing Vil injured by Float, Komari launched an attack, dramatically increasing her abilities. Float was shocked to see Komari kill everyone. Then, Float suddenly defeated because Sukuna suddenly appeared. After that, Sukuna wanted Komari to know her story and even revealed that she was a terrorist. Komari was still in disbelief, but Sukuna insisted on revealing her secret. Next, the scene shifted to Sukuna's secret memory. In the subconscious realm, Sukuna was seen meeting with Komari. Sukuna began to tell her life story to Komari. At that time, Komari seemed impressed by the beauty of the place they visited, but Sukuna interrupted and said that the place was actually full of sadness for her. Hearing this, Komari became curious and wanted to know more about Sukuna. Sukuna then revealed that her older sister was also named Komari. However, her family had been killed by a terrorist group called Sakazuki. Sukuna continued to tell the beautiful story of herself and her older sister, who were very close and affectionate. Her older sister was a good mentor to Sukuna. But, during a camping trip, her family experienced a tragedy because the terrorist group Sakazuki exploited her and attacked her family. Sakazuki was an organization opposing the power of the gods, so they decided to kill anyone with godly power, and they used Sukuna as a tool to obey their orders, threatening to kill her family if she didn't comply. Back to the present, Komari and Sukuna continued to talk, where she asked why Sukuna thought about people who were already dead, considering her family had died. Komari felt Sukuna shouldn't bring them back to life. Sukuna then explained that her current father was a different person because she wanted her original father back in her life. Therefore, Sukuna resurrected memories of her real father into the false one. Komari was surprised to hear this story and said she would be like a sister to Sukuna. However, she didn't want Sukuna to replace her mind, but to be a real sister to her in her own form. After that, they hugged and expressed mutual affection. Not long after, Odilon, the leader of Sakazuki, appeared, and he was furious because Sukuna befriended Komari instead of killing her. Sukuna tried to stop Odilon from attacking Komari but failed. In a desperate situation, Sukuna remembered Millicent's words about Komari and decided to give her blood to Komari, which awakening her power. After drinking the blood, Komari became incredibly strong and immediately destroyed Odilon. At that moment, Komari no longer held back her power as Odilon had hurt Sukuna, so she attacked brutally, which made Odilon to flee. Upon arriving at their base, Odilon recounted the incident to his comrades. However, his members had betrayed him because Sukuna often visited the base and infiltrated their minds to defend herself. Shortly after, Komari then appeared again and killed Odilon. Sometime later, Komari had recovered, while Sukuna met with the Emperor and was easily forgiven despite her past as a terrorist. After that, Sukuna visited Komari's room after she was summoned. Komari then asked Sukuna out on a date, making Vil upset. As time passed, the closeness between Sukuna and Komari made Vil cry. At the same time, the remaining terrorist members planned their next move. The scene shifted to the beach of the Jerua Kingdom, where Komari and her friends were relaxing on the beach at that time, as she was on vacation for 2 weeks from the Emperor. At that moment, Komari lay on a beach chair, with Sukuna played in the water, while Vil showed her beautiful bikini to Komari. At that moment, Komari was very enthusiastic about spending her vacation on the beach, but they had to return soon because the time had come. Meanwhile, on the other side, Komari's troops were racing to win prizes to take a photo with her, showing their enthusiasm in winning the competition. Shortly after, Komari went to Nelia's room, who was the leader of the strongest army in Jerua, as she had invited her. At that moment, Nelia invited Komari to join her, considering her reputation as a famous army leader. However, Komari refused to ally with Nelia because she didn't want to be part of evil efforts. Komari explained to Nelia that although she was strong, she wouldn't use her power for negative purposes. Upon hearing this, Nelia was instantly touched by Komari's kindness. Not long after, Lieutenant Inu appeared and informed Komari about the chaos caused by her troops entering Jerua territory. At that moment, Nelia's troops suspected members of Komari's troops. However, instead, Komari's troops burned down Nelia's troops, shocking Nelia with her cruelty. Komari and Vil then launched their actions and fled from there. Not long after, Komari arrived at the kingdom and was asked to return home by Karen because there was a guest named Carla. Apparently, they discussed cooperation, where Carla wanted to join Komari's team to achieve peace with Jerua. Upon hearing this, Komari gladly welcomed the offer. At that moment, Komari received a message from Nelia stating that there was a war, and finally, Komari rejected Carla's offer because she didn't want to join her alliance or seek peace. Carla was surprised to learn that Komari was an evil Shikiguten, whereas she thought Komari was very good and loved peace. Nevertheless, the Emperor decided that Carla couldn't arbitrarily decide on an alliance. Finally, Carla joined Komari's team to help end the war against Jerua. Meanwhile, Nelia received a reprimand from her superiors for her mistakes. This made her even more vengeful and determined to defeat Komari. Back to the past, Nelia and her father met Komari's mother named Urin. Initially, Nelia hated Urin for not recognizing her, but eventually accepted her presence because she always patiently taught her. Until they discussed in the middle of the night, where Urin advised Nelia to be patient and not to mistreat her friends. Eventually, the advice left a lasting impression on Nelia. In the present, Carla was busy grumbling and hating Komari. However, her companion teased her instead for her attitude of wanting to disrupt Komari and letting her fight alone. Kohara reminded her not to act recklessly and to use her brain wisely, but Carla pretended to be busy when Komari asked for help. The next day, Komari was seen sleeping soundly in her bed, But she was surprised when she woke up and realized that she had fallen asleep in the middle of an important meeting. At that moment, Vil explained to Komari that they were in the border area of the fortress, but Komari and the others were discussing in the castle. Apparently, while sleeping, Komari didn't realize that she was taken away by Vil. Komari was then scolded for being disrespectful by Carla after she explained her plan for war. Seeing the newspaper news about the alliance she built, Komari felt annoyed because she had to take responsibility for leading the troops, even though she didn't fully understand the situation. After that, they realized that the leaders of Jeroa had taken action, so they decided to move to the war location because several kingdoms would oppose the alliance built by Komari. Meanwhile, Nelia was scolded by the leaders and the kingdom's officials for her failure to acquire Karen's special imperial power. Although Nelia had been there first, she still failed, and everyone left her because of the defeat she experienced. At that moment, one of the government official named Pascal called Nelia very foolish in leading the war and insulted her failure. Nelia then denied and promised to be stronger, even ambitious to become a leader. Pascal was surprised to hear this and left her to wage war with Komari and her alliance. On the other hand, the emperor gathered his members to plan a strategy. At that moment, Karen received a phone call from the leader of Jeroa learning that Jeroa had brought many allies to destroy Karen's kingdom. Instead of being afraid, Karen was delighted and informed her team that they had arrived at the location to launch an attack. Karen then unified the forces of Komari's alliance members to fight against the nations that were attacking them. While fighting the enemies, Komari and Vil used various traps owned by Vil, which impressed Komari even more with her greatness. Unexpectedly, Komari encountered Pascal, so he decided to fight against Komari, but he couldn't easily defeat Komari, especially since she was always with strong companions. Later, Nelia took Komari to a safe place because she wanted to be friends with her. Komari was surprised to be taken to an unfamiliar place, but Nelia explained that Yurin was her teacher, and she wanted to continue Yurin's teachings of goodness by befriending Komari. But Komari didn't realize that they had met before. Nelia then told Komari about their childhood where she was separated from Komari. Nelia still remembered their meeting, but Komari forgot it. After that, they decided to join forces and unite their strengths, even though initially Vil objected. On the other hand, Pascal was angry for losing track of Komari, making him frustrated, and he was determined to return and destroy her. Shortly after, the battle between Float and the enemy commander took place, where Float took action and was determined to stop the chaos. Komari and her friends then discussed the attack by Jeroa's leader. At that time, Nelia provided information but realized that they weren't listening to her, so Nelia became angry with Komari, and she instead explained to Vil about her food choices. But only Nelia's servant named Gertrude and Vil heard her. Afterward, Komari and her friends continued their journey to the inn. On the other hand, Jeroa's leader ordered Pascal to capture Komari and her friends at the inn. Meanwhile, Komari and her friends were chatting at the inn, where Pascal suddenly appeared after he was assigned to capture Nelia and Komari to be taken to Jeroa. Pascal then launched an attack, but was surprised when Komari and her friends escaped. At that moment, Vil thought of a way to escape and took the opportunity to carry Komari away. While Komari worried about her relationship with Nelia being too close, making Pascal even more eager to fight against them. Not long after that, Sukuna and the others appeared, where they provided assistance to Komari and Vil to escape, but Komari was reluctant to leave Nelia. Finally, they decided to continue the journey together, but Sukuna had to stay behind to defeat Pascal. When Komari and her friends arrived at Fantasy River, Pascal managed to defeat Sukuna and her troops. At that moment, Komari and her friends saw around Fantasy River filled with corpses, and Vil explained that Sukuna was sent to various countries to fight enemies using her power. After that, Komari and Vil separated from Gertrude and Nelia. Shortly after, Nelia was instantly surprised when attacked by Gertrude, who turned out to be Pascal's sibling. After that, Pascal came to help Gertrude fight against Nelia, while Komari also engaged in battle with them. As a result, Komari and her friends were severely injured, but Pascal was surprised to see Sukuna, who should have been dead, but now reappeared. At that moment, Sukuna took action and surely defeated Pascal and Gertrude. Due to their cruelty, Komari and Nelia suffered severe injuries. At that moment, Komari and Nelia stood close to each other for mutual reinforcement. where Komari asked Nelia to drink her blood as a sign of friendship. Komari's blood made Nelia stronger, and her sword was empowered by the power of that blood. Together, they believed they could defeat their enemies. Meanwhile, Karen was met with the Jerua's leader to intimidate, as Karen believed that even though Jerua had thousands of troops, Komari and her friends couldn't possibly lose. Although the leader of Jerua laughed at Karen, she still disturbed him. They were then surprised when watching the news broadcasted live by Melka and Thio, reporting on the atrocities that took place in fantasy heaven committed by the kingdom of Jerua. Apparently, the special power possessed by Nelia had awakened after gaining trust from Komari. After drinking Komari's blood, Nelia felt stronger and confident in defeating her enemies. At that moment, Carla appeared and reminded Nelia of the situation outside, especially considering that Komari and her friends would face thousands of special troops ready to attack. Carla and the others then encouraged each other to fight harder. At that moment, Nelia also told Komari to drink her blood in return for the trust given to her, so now it was Nelia's turn to help her. At that moment, Vil and the others were surprised to see the closeness between Komari and Nelia, even though they had just met. However, because Komari's mother was Nelia's teacher, they felt like siblings. Komari then drank the blood given by Nelia, so they united with their respective powers. Meanwhile, Karen continued to advise the leaders of Jerua, who still believed in the strength of his subordinates. The scene then shifted to the battle of Komari and her friends. At that moment, Komari shocked the world by destroying the enemy forces, even casually displaying her great abilities in front of everyone. Afterward, Komari and Nelia united to face Pascal and then faced their final task, which was to eliminate the cruel leader of Jerua. Shortly after, then appeared in the middle of a conversation between Karen and the leader of Jerua. Without hesitation, Komari launched an attack to eliminate the leader of Jerua. After that, the battle ended with the victory of Komari and her friends, who managed to save the world. Sometime later, Nelia returned and met her father, embracing him to soothe her longing. Meanwhile, Komari's troops became more enthusiastic about training because of her increasingly captivating leadership. After that, the women competed because Nelia asked Komari to be her subordinate. However, Komari firmly refused and asked Nelia to change. At that moment, Sukuna and Vil immediately stopped Nelia's actions, as they were very protective of Komari and ready to fight against Nelia, who wanted to have Komari alone. Upon seeing this, Komari could only shake her head at her friend's actions. And the story ends. Moral lesson from the story: never boast about your greatness to the media, or you might end up promising to follow your assistant's whims just to keep your love for romance novels a secret. And remember, always pay attention when choosing a horse. It's better than getting a free roller coaster ride you didn't ask for.